In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight, featuring people from all walks of Dominican life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of our people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, our public servants, youth, and the ordinary Dominican. Listen to their stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the Spotlight will also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight.
In 2013, the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce was hosting its annual general meeting. Lillian Piper at the time was the president, and I believe my general manager at Flow, Jeffrey Baptiste, was the vice president. They needed someone to chair their AGM. And so I believe Jeffrey recommended me as the person who could chair the AGM. And so I chaired the AGM of the DAIC that year. A section of the AGM provided an opportunity for 3 prominent business persons to speak about how they navigated through the challenges and the difficulties of business over the years. They were Mrs. Janice Armour, Mr. Gary Ed, and Mr. Macmillan John Baptist. When I heard the stories of those persons, I thought to myself that this should not be limited to just this one room. And so I threw out a challenge to the media persons who were present on that day and suggested that maybe someone should take on the challenge of creating a platform to allow those persons to share their stories. And so that evening I went home, I thought about it, and I said, but you know what, probably I could take on the challenge. And so I did. I went to Q95, spoke to Mr. Sheridan Gregoire, and at the end of it all, we ended up with Mondays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. for the In the Spotlight radio show. The first show was aired on May 13th, 2013, with the first guest being Mrs. Janice Armour, one of those 3 persons who actually inspired the start of the show from the DAIC AGM. The In the Spotlight radio show, as the name implies, spotlights the lives of the people of Dominica, our people, their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations, their struggles, their challenges, their pains. It provides an opportunity to inspire others and to motivate others as these persons share their stories. The show is aired on Monday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. on Q95 FM radio. And once Facebook Live became a thing, then we started going and utilizing Facebook Live as well. The anniversary show on the 15th will bring us to just over 260 shows, averaging at least 26 shows a year. And in my view, that's not too bad at all. So that's what we're about, the In the Spotlight radio show. And we continue to look forward to doing this as long as we can. I believe persons tuned in the first time and continue to listen to the program, tune into the program. One, I think because of the host, and I believe people like conversational type human interest stories. And, I think I provide a really good platform, a comfortable platform that persons can come and sit with me like we're in a bar, having a conversation, having a drink. And I think that is one of the reasons why people tune into the program. I believe people love human interest stories, stories where people talk about their lives and their experiences, good or bad. And so because it's human interest stories. And every time there's the opportunity to hear a new story, new adventures, new challenges, new hopes, um, new experiences, I think that causes people to return to the program. And I think to the program is very impactful. The fact that it motivates and inspires, people are always looking for that. And I have a story where a very good friend of the show shared with me one time that there was someone they knew that a very night of one of the shows we were having, that person was actually contemplating suicide. And this is not a story, this is actually the truth. And the person was listening to the guest on the show that night, and that literally saved the person's life, because the person chose not to do that on that night of that particular guest. These are the reasons why people tune in to the show. The In the Spotlight radio show audience is very diverse. I have met mothers who have said to me that they allow their children to listen because, of course, it is that type of family type program where anyone can listen. There are members of my audience who simply listen via the radio, and that's quite fine for them. There are those who love to see the guest, and so they tune in via the Facebook Live of the In the Spotlight radio show. There are those who just enjoy the show and they meet me every day and they talk about the show and they talk about that guest, boy, I heard you last night, and so on. And I really, really enjoy that. I enjoy getting feedback. I enjoy hearing from our guests. There are those who tune in and they comment, they react, they engage, they interact during the Facebook Live. And I appreciate that. There are persons who will send me messages during the show. After the show, they'll send me questions. I really love my audience. And I want to say thank you to them for being here over the last 10 years. There are maybe one or two who may have stopped listening for whatever reason, or who probably just don't have the time. I hope that you can come back to the fold and tune in and join us, especially after the anniversary celebrations. We're really looking forward to having you join us back. Thank you to everyone who listens and supports in any way. So the future of the show continues to be bright. There are still very much many stories to tell, and I look forward to providing the platform to allow persons to tell those stories. There's a lot of areas that I've not gone into. So, for example, farmers. I wanna bring more farmers on. I think I've only had one farmer. I want to bring on, a lot of the areas that we've not touched. I'm really looking forward to providing the opportunity for those persons to share their stories with us. So another 5, maybe another 10 years, who knows? But we intend on continuing. The future of the In the Spotlight radio show is very bright. As we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the In the Spotlight radio show, and many persons who know me knows that I'm someone who shows a lot of gratitude. I am always thankful. I am always grateful for whoever supports me in any way. And I really would like to say thank you to Mr. Gregoire for providing the platform that I can use to share those stories on the In the Spotlight radio show. I also want to shout out JL Joseph. JL was there at the beginning at Q95 when the In the Spotlight radio show started, and she really worked hard to get some sponsors and to get the show going. She also did, I think, the outro and some other things for the program. So thank you, JL. Thank you to the listeners who consistently tune in and support the program. Those sponsors who have supported us over the years, so very grateful, so very thankful for your support. We're doing our 10th anniversary celebration, and many of you have already come forward to provide some gifts and prizes for our giveaways and everything that we're doing. If you would like to make a cash contribution to help us, so I could give GK here something, for his hard work that he's doing. He's all the way at Peak at Portsmouth with me today, and definitely, he deserves to be compensated for that. So in whatever way that you can support us, it would be very, very appreciated, and we thank you sincerely. I cannot call everybody's name, but thank you everyone who have come through on this program, supported in any way possible. We are very, very grateful. very importantly, thank you to the guests who have consented. Some have had to persuade, some since I asked they're okay, because I mean, telling your story, telling the world about your life may not be the most comfortable and easiest thing to do, but many of you have come through, you've accepted the challenge, you've accepted the request, and you have made it happen. We thank you so much, and we're looking forward to many more guests coming through. Please remember to follow our In the Spotlight Radio Show page. We also have a fans page as well. Leave a review on the page. We appreciate reviews. Follow us, like us. Also, we are also on Instagram. We appreciate your support there as well. So again, guys, I'm truly excited to be celebrating 10 years of the In the Spotlight Radio Show. And I thank all of you again for whatever part you've played throughout the last 10 years. And truly, I have not much more to say. That was actually a piece that I did that we ran on social media. And I thought, on the Monday that we're actually observing the celebration, the anniversary, that I would air that for you, the radio folks who probably do not have Facebook or YouTube to listen. So thank you so much for taking the time and listening to the information shared there. It means I do not need to share this information anymore as we get ready for tonight's program. I want to use the opportunity, first and foremost, to again thank Mr. Gregoire for this platform, this opportunity to be able to do this. And I just want to reach out and mention some partners who've come on board with some prizes for us for our quizzes that we're doing on social media. Majority of it is on social media. I suspect I need to do something for my radio listeners. So we want to say thank you to Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited, GBA Enterprises, Bunny's Cakes and Catering, Pamplemousse Goodies and Services, Fine Foods Inc., Tony Sponge, Callaloo House, Great Old House, Jolly's Pharmacy, Dominica Gourmet, Queen to Queen, Body Bliss Spa, VF Inc. Youth Series, and VF Inc. Phenomenal Women Series, as well as Perky's Pizza. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, partners, for supporting. And those of you who have provided some cash contribution, at least we've had 2 persons who've done that, 3 persons. So thank you so much. You know yourselves. We invite you to follow our In the Spotlight Radio Show page. That's where the action is with all of the prizes. And folks, we're ready to roll this evening. We have a very, very special guest. If you listen to the recording, you would have heard the background as to why this particular guest is here this evening. And were it not for the DAIC, were it not for Jeffrey Baptiste, my general manager, who recommended me to host the AGM, was it not for Lillian Piper as well, who was the president of the DAIC, and so wasn't it for Mrs. Janice Armour, Mr. Macmillan John Baptiste, and Mr. Gary Ed. These 3 persons were invited to that AGM and to speak, to share their stories as to how they navigated through the challenges over the years to be able to sustain their businesses. And so they shared, and so I was inspired, and here we are this evening. The interesting thing is that the very first guest was Mrs. Janice Armour. Mr. Macmillan came somewhere along the 10 years, somewhere I think around in the middle, Mr. Macmillan came through. And Mr. Ed, we've not yet had on the program. And so, Mr. Ed called me about something else. It was my intention. I'd actually spoken to one of his sons about it. I wanted Mr. Ed for my 10th anniversary program. Mr. Ed called me about something else. I don't know if he really wants me to declare what he called me about. And at the same time, I'm saying to him, well, I'm trying to find you, Mr. Ed. And then I said to him, this is what I want you for. He said, no, I'm not really, I said, can I come over to your office to speak to you? And he allowed me. So, once I got to that office, that was it, right? So we are here this evening as we celebrate 10 years of the In the Spotlight radio show. And I'm making history this evening with Mr. Gary Ed. He'll tell us if he's still the managing director, if he has retired, if he comes ever so often, whatever the case might be. Mr. Ed, an absolute pleasure to have you, sir, this evening. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Ferdina, and thank you so much for encouraging me to come again. I didn't want to, but I said
You
it
did
is
not.
such a special occasion. I need to support you, and I would like to congratulate you on all that you have done over the last 10 years. It's not easy in Dominica to maintain things, but you've done it, and congratulations, and please keep going.
Thank you, sir, for that. I know you warned me about this, sir, but I suspect I just can't help it. Mr. Head, anyone you want to just say good evening to, everyone listening and tuned in with us this evening?
I'm not sure who know about the program or me
Oh,
being
trust
in the
me, they
program.
know.
Well, anyways, just to the family and everyone at my church, I hope I say the right things and that it will be a program that they will remember and enjoy.
Mr. Ed, I'm not going to ask you your age, but what I'll say to you is that you look very good. Your skin is really nice and young looking. I don't mean to make you blush, but you look very good, sir. I have to say that to you.
Well, thank you very much. It makes me feel good to hear somebody like you say I look good, and whoever makes me feel good, thank you very much.
But you're not going to tell us the age.
Well, I was 80 last year.
You were 80 last year.
5th of September 1942 is when I was born.
Oh my goodness.
But I need to thank the good Lord for taking care of me.
And how are you health-wise?
I'm pretty good, except for a couple of knees and my hip.
Okay.
And that's thanks to Windsor Park before the new Windsor Park. We used to play a lot of football there. And of course, it was quite an uneven surface, big boulders sticking up, a lot of old grass and stuff. And it wasn't the safest or the most comfortable place. And of course, I was the goalkeeper, which made it even worse. So
you were a goalkeeper?
Yes, I was, yes.
For what team?
Well, there were various teams. There was Blackburn, there was Emerald. I think I played a couple of games for Newtown, but I wasn't a member of the club. I think it was Blackburn was probably the most the longest one that I was with. Yeah.
But other than that, you are healthy and you are well.
Thank God for that. Yes.
I'm sorry I had to have you climb up those stairs tonight.
Well, it's because of the old knee, but we'll deal with the old knee.
Yes.
The important thing is that all my problems are outside. I can see them.
Thank God.
Hopefully there's nothing going on inside in some little dark corner of my body.
I hope so. And at 80 going on 81,
right,
we thank God for that.
Thank you.
Yes. I am intrigued first and foremost by the last name Aird. Can you put it into context for us as to...
Aird is a Scottish name. There are lots of Lairds and Aird, Adairs, and so on. It's all origins in Scotland. And the Aird family to which I belong, or from which I came to Guyana sometime in the 1800s. And from Guyana, they came to Dominica. I understand, although I've never met any of them, there are Airds in other islands. But basically, it was from the Isle of Skye in Scotland, apparently.
Isle of Skye?
Yes, S-K-Y-E.
So you're Scottish?
Well, yes, I have Scottish roots. And there are a few Airds around the place that that are supposedly related. The one I can remember was I think it was the manager or the chairman of Hilton Hotel, who's retired and probably dead by now. I used to meet him a couple of times in my days of representing Dominica in the Tourist Board. But there are one or two other people who come in from time to time, and we there's no family tree as such, But the other one, of course, which is of interest, is on my grandfather's side, is Whitchurch. That is typical English, and I have one or two people that are closer to me. Like there's one person I keep in touch with in England who his grandfather, his great grandfather was my great grandfather, which is his brother. So that's what, second cousin, third cousin, or something like that. But that's basically what it is.
So tell me about how the Eds came to Dominica, and give me the Whitchurch connection as well.
Well, the Whitchurches
Make it make sense for us.
Well, the Whitchurch came here sometime in the late 1800s to manage some estates in Dominica. In particular, I think there was the one at near Wesley, and then he was an auctioneer, and he set up a business in Roseau in 1910. Lloyd's Agents, shipping agency, and various other things which I really not sure of. But during those early days, became agents for Austin Morris cars, vehicles, whiskey. Then we had a little shop, which was underneath the building, which is presently our Western Union property there. And it expanded into all sorts of different things that we are today. The heirs was, he married Whitchurch's daughter, and that's the connection. He fought in the First World War, and after the war, or during the war, he was injured, not severely that he couldn't continue life. And he came to Dominica, was working in public works, and then he got involved with the Whitchurches, and as I said, married, would be my great grandmother, is it? Yeah. So that's the connection.
Interestingly, Mr. Ed, the lane outside of your building is called Drury Lane.
Yes.
We had no clue, and I'll give you a little story. One of my colleagues lost, I think it was her earpiece or something, and we were trying to track it. And the tracker was showing that it is somewhere on Drury Lane. So
Right.
we're Drury Lane. Where's Drury Lane? And then today, when I was doing my little research, I saw that is in fact the lane, Drury Lane.
Yes, I think it's named after a famous lane in London, where a lot of the theaters are, I think. Yes.
So
and that lane connects Long Lane
Mhm.
right through until also not Great George. Well, it comes out on Kennedy Avenue.
As you mentioned the lanes, Mr. Ed, not to digress, the many of us, myself included, we're not very familiar with all of the lanes around Roseau. Are you?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
I used to be, but over time, and having no need really to go to these places and so on, you tend to forget.
You tend to
But
forget.
you remember the main streets and so on. Yes.
Okay, so we you said you don't necessarily have a family tree, but let us go back a bit and share with us who came to Dominica. Is it your great grandfather?
My great grandfather Whitchurch.
Your great
And
grandfather.
then my grandfather J.O. Aird came also, but at a later date, from Guyana, where he was born, and then he joined the West India Regiment, fought in the First World War, some of the major battles, and he eventually came to Dominica. I don't know really why. He got married to Whitchurch's daughter, and there we are.
And there we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so who was your mother and who was your father?
My mother was J.O. Aird's daughter.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my father died long time ago, and I really didn't know him at all.
You didn't know him at all?
No. But so my grandfather brought me up, J.O. Aird.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. But do you remember much about your mom?
Yes, she lived in Canada. She got married and went to live in Canada. And sorry?
Come closer to the mic.
Oh, beg your pardon.
Yes.
She left here, was working in Trinidad, got married, and went to live in Trinidad, went to live in Canada. And where she lived all her life, she would visit Dominica from time to time, usually once a year, and she died in 1997. Yeah. and she's buried in the Anglican cemetery.
And that was your
Grandmother.
grandmother.
My mother.
Your mother.
Yes.
So does that mean you grew up outside of Dominica?
No. I grew up here.
You grew up here?
Yes. She left here at an early age. My grandparents brought me up.
Oh, your
Yeah,
grandparents
yes,
brought you up.
yes.
Tell me about them, Mr. Ed. How much do you remember about them?
Oh,
What
very
were the
much.
things they taught you as a young boy growing up?
Well, my grandmother was a very serious person. I was a little afraid of her. But she was very good for me. In other words, she looked after me very well. My grandfather was a short, stocky man. He used to dress in a white linen suit to go to work in the heat of Roseau. Linen. Well, linen. Yeah, I think it was linen. Perfectly thing. And loved whiskey and soda. And in those days, it was all white people in the Dominica Club. So he was one of those people. But a very generous man. And he really laid the foundation for the church which was there at the time to expand, and then I came back to take it over.
You came back to take it. In terms of your grandparents, what are some of the life lessons that they taught you?
Well, I think to be honesty, to be polite, gentlemanly. Everybody is somebody, no matter who they are, how poor they might be or how rich they might be. But you have to respect them and take them for what they are. They have their faults, they have their good points, whatever it is. And that is, I think, but it is the question of being concerned about people. And somebody, if you can help somebody that is not as fortunate as you are, it's really an obligation to do that.
And you feel that you've lived out those principles that they taught
Well,
you
I
the best
tried
you could?
to. Maybe I'm not the person to answer that, but yeah, I would think so. I don't like bad manners. I don't like scruffiness. You can be poor, but you can be well dressed in whatever you can afford to buy, to wear. And you can be polite. I know nowadays it's politeness and decency. Sometimes the things are forgotten, but they're very important.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up at Morne Bruce until I was born in 1942. I went to Barbados to school. I think it was 1950, 8 years old. I used to travel on the Grumman Goose, the seaplane that used to come to Portsmouth. And we would travel from Roseau to Portsmouth, either on the crash launch, which was a fast sort of air sea rescue type of vessel with some seats, comfortable seats. Or you would go as far, I think it was Collyho or Salisbury, and then a drive as far as there. And then you could get on either, I think it was a Lady Bernadette owned by R.B. Douglas, that would travel up and down between Portsmouth and Roseau. Quite an experience. And when we got to Portsmouth, we had some friends at the Pickard House, which is I think bought by some English people now, and it's one of the stately estate houses overlooking the Pickard area, where you have all these buildings that are put up for the Ross University students. We'd spend the morning there, and then all of a sudden you'd hear this noise coming over there, and you see this little plane coming in and landing with the wash of the waves on either side, coming towards the shore. And it carried 4 big seats and 2 little box seats. And it was always amazing when it was coming in with a terrible roar and engines, and all of a sudden when it got to the shore, they had a little anchor that they would throw over the front of the plane, and the peace, everything was quiet. And all of a sudden, if you're a passenger, you'd hear creak as the rowing boat now that was coming alongside to take you out and to bring you ashore. And that was quite an experience. But then of course, towards the end, more people were traveling that lived in the south, so they shifted to Soufriere Bay. But once again, there was no road connecting Soufriere with Roseau, so you had to go by launch.
By launch.
Yes, to travel to Soufriere to pick up the plane. And there is a building there now. I think it's something to do with tourism, right on the front there, and that is where immigration and customs were. And then you had upstairs was a sort of a restroom, and there was a little wooden sort of jetty which was you were able to use to go onto the plane. But it was quite an experience going to school in Barbados with friends and so on, and getting excited getting into this little plane, going to Martinique, landing on dry land, and then from Martinique to Barbados.
A couple of things, Mr. Ed. Around that time, what were our roads like? So to get to Collyho or Salisbury, wherever you said it would come through.
Well, there was certain. It was pretty rough, but there's narrow roads, and because there were not many cars in the 40s, but quite possible.
Did your family have a car?
Yes. I think it was number 8, something like that.
Number 8.
Yes, because everybody knew everybody's number.
Right.
And of course,
there was so few.
Exactly. And of course, there was no problem to park. Not like there is today.
I like that. So that's one, Mr. Ed. And then I want to find out how long it took. So you said you got to Martinique first.
Yes.
And then to Barbados.
And then to Barbados, that was the end of our
journey.
But then the plane would go on to St. Lucia and I think St. Vincent. Probably all in one day, as far as I remember. Then they'd probably stay the night or something and then come back the next day, come back up through the chain of islands.
Do you remember how long it took to get to the point of Martinique and then to Barbados?
Not really.
Not really.
We were so busy looking and talking and carrying on because then rather wondering how long it would take.
So what would happen when you get to Martinique though?
You just stay on the plane. Yeah. Because they landed on dry land. I think in St. Lucia.
Is it to pick up stuff? What would they?
Yeah,
what would be the reason?
Pick up people like it is today.
Like 6 seats, Mr.
Yeah, but that's all they want. I was not old enough to travel on the W.L. Eunicia, a very large wooden schooner that was owned by a Captain Joseph, who lived in Portsmouth. And some of the other people I can remember, Anthony Agar, the Agars who live at Laho in the heights of Louvière. He was older than I, and he used to travel on the W.L. Eunicia. And it was quite an experience because they would probably be loading copra in Portsmouth to transport to Barbados, where they would use the copra to make soap. So you can imagine this rancid copra smell on the W.L. Eunicia, becalmed between Roseau and Scott's Head before it got into the channel, where you would pick up the wind and then you'd be able to move ahead. So that was an experience that unfortunately I never had because I was not
old enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Why did you have to go to Barbados to go to school?
Because the school still exists today called Lodge School, and a lot of the boys from the small islands like St. Kitts, Antigua, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, myself, Dominica, would go to that school. It was a boarding school, so that was the attraction. Really.
Do you remember what school was like?
It was a wonderful experience. We boarded in a plantation house because I wasn't actually boarding at the school, Lodge School, because there was a limited number of boys. But there was one of the masters at the school had this arrangement with this plantation house, and there were proper rooms and so on. So there were about 20 or 30 of us from all the islands, and we used to go to Lodge School every day to school.
What subjects were taught at that time?
Basically, the usual biology, chemistry, English literature, English language, French. I think French was the only foreign language.
So tu parles français?
Oui, no.
Oui.
No, parlez pas-
Un petit peu?
on parle pas trop, non. So it was a wonderful experience. And when the coronation was held last week, I think it was. I remember 1953. I was at school in Barbados, and we had to get up that particular day, the day of the coronation, dress up in our blazers and ties, and go to Bridgetown, where they had a big parade and so on. You know, typical Little England, Barbados, Little England. You know. So, and I was speaking to Anthony Agar the other day, and he remembers it as well because he was in the cadet corps, and he was part of the celebrations as well. And that particular day, which was very exciting for England, I would think, because news had come through that Sherpa Tenzing and Hillary, who was a New Zealand, had just climbed Mount Everest.
Oh.
It was the first time human beings had gone to the top. So it was quite a day. I always remember that.
Mr. Ed, this conversation is quite fascinating so far for me, and I'm sure the audience feel very much the same. And that is what I was looking forward to on this program, and I'm already getting it. I'm interested in knowing how long you went to school in Barbados.
I was there from 1950 to 55. Then I found myself going to school in England. But the Barbados was a wonderful experience because every single morning we'd get up at 5, and this plantation houses out in the country in St. Philip, which at that time was a pretty country area. And every morning we had to go and take a half an hour run in the cane piece, in the cane field, and come back and do exercises. And I think that is where my interest in sport as a participant, and nowadays following football and cricket and whatever it is. That was quite an experience. And then we would be taken to Bridgetown every Saturday, so we could go and do some shopping if we wanted to. And I remember I used to go to the Carenage, where all the schooners used to be. And it was very interesting because a lot of the schooners that used to trade between Dominique and Barbados would be in the Carenage. And then in later years, when I came to work at Whitchurch, many of those schooners would call in Dominica, and I had quite a friendship going with them.
At the end of the 5 years that you did in Barbados, what would be what type of certification would you get?
Well, I left before I had any certificates or anything, because I would have only I was 42 to 58. I was just about 12, 11, okay. 12 when I went to England. But when I went to England, I had to go to what was called a prep school, which recognized as the precursor to a public school. And a public school in England and I didn't go to Eton or Harrow, but I went to one of those types of schools. So at that time, the educational system in the Caribbean, at least in Dominica, was a year behind England. So I had to go to this prep school to kind of study intensely to be able to pass the common entrance to go to the public school.
Mm-hmm. How many times you had to make the trip to Barbados, by the way? I wanted to find out.
Well, every holidays.
Every holidays.
Yes.
So that'd be
3 times going and 3 times coming back.
3 times going in.
Yeah.
Did you always look forward to it?
Oh yes, Barbados was okay. It was close to home. It was a Caribbean where I didn't know anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And there were friends there, and they're friends for life, so to speak. In fact, I understand in September they're having a grand reunion of all the lodge boys who are still alive to come to Barbados for a week of remembrances and enjoyment and renewing friendships and so on. But it's the wrong time of the year, right in the middle of the hurricane season. Although it's not too far from Dominique if anything was to happen.
But Godspeed, do you plan on going?
I would like to go, yes.
You would like to go, yes. You mentioned going to Barbados, and you mentioned friends. I want to find out if you had any siblings.
I have one half sister from Canada, but she lives in Canada. But she comes here. She's been here a few times, but she's a Canadian and she's quite happy.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. But she visits.
Well, it has not for many years. Well,
Okay.
I say many years, but not for a few years.
Not for a few
Yeah.
years. So it was practically you.
Me alone, yes.
So you had to have friends. What was that like?
I'm accustomed to it, doing my own thing,
What
looking
was
after
that like?
myself.
What was that like, Mr. Ed? All this
You always
time.
have friends always around, So if you're not
Yes.
up to anything, you need somebody there to give you a push up. And so on.
So you had good friends.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yes. So outside of Barbados, tell me generally about the time that you spent in Dominica growing up in Monbruce.
Mhm.
How much do you remember in terms of, life growing up as
Well,
Gary Ed?
Bruce was um, not a country by that time, but there was no Kings Hill. There was a massive bush and so on, because all of that area was part of the fortifications for the British. Like, of course, at the Mourne Booth at the top, where the police training center is, was the fortifications, and they going back to the 1700s and so on. They would have the British forces would be there, the resident forces. So there was nothing, and there were a few houses up on from leaving the where the Dominica Club was going up, maybe one to Presbytery for the Anglican Church was there. Then you had a few Framptons, and then went up, and then a few bigger houses at the top, the Mourne, where you go to by the cross. But it was all country.
Oh.
And of course, I had a wonderful time. I mean, I was all over the place. I remember we had a gang of us who would play cowboys and Indians, which was the thing at that time, and turkey feathers and chicken feathers, and of course, all the lice, all in your hair and so on. Silly things like that.
Yes,
And of course,
yes.
going to the river, spending the whole day there, sometime with the sea, and then so on. Of course, one pays for all of that because there was no shirt on you. You were just
You burnt.
all over the place.
Mhm.
Wonderful times going down to Carnival as a spectator. Well looked after, and of course, in those days it was, I suppose you could say, spoiled in a way. You know.
You are an only child.
Yeah, well, yes, that too. But I never really sort of worked on that point. But once again, friends, family, and not family so much, but friends around the place. So you were never alone.
How is the memory in remembering some of the friends that you had back then?
Yeah, I do, but a lot of them have passed on. Some
Okay.
have gone to other places and lost contact.
Okay. Something I really would like to hear from you, as we're still, within this sphere of that element of the conversation. You told us what Monbruce looked like back then. How much can you tell us about what Roseau looked like back then?
Let me just finish Mourne Bruce.
Right, go ahead.
The house that I lived in was called Trillamead. It's a
The house had a name,
It was called Trillamead. It was a church-owned house, and the Josephs own it now. It is the second house on the Mourne, and we lived there. And the first schooling I had was with the two daughters of Arrow Smith, who was the administrator in the 40s. And the three of us would go to school there, and there was a Canon Eversley who was in charge of the Anglican Church at the time, and with his wife, and we would go to school there in the morning. And I always remember I could never spell Mississippi. That's one thing I remember. And it was more like a play school. And then from that, I went to a convent. Now, that was interesting because it's the same convent that's there today. But of course, in those days, the only building at the bottom there was a long sort of wooden, like a slave hut, the entire long thing, and it was in very bad shape. There was a huge breadfruit tree right in the center. And of course, there was no concrete. It was dusty and so on. And the entrance now was on the side of, it's Valley Road. There's a rather intricate entrance there in the hedge. Because where the entrance is now, it wasn't the entrance in those days. And of course, there were those nuns Mother Borgia, Mother Christiani, and they really were wicked. I shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but they had a ruler, and the ruler had a little sort of metal strip at the end. And if you misbehaved, they would give you a couple shots with that on your knuckles, and then they put you to kneel down with how many Hail Marys and so on before you could were allowed to get up. And it really was rough. Anyway, but I think it was good in a way because I learned discipline from that. No matter who you are, you gotta sit down. You gotta do. When we had these slates and with a chalk, we had exercise books as well. But sometimes if you really behave badly, they would give you lines to do where you had to go home and write 100 lines. I will behave myself or something, and this wonderful long handwriting, you know. So that was before I went to school in Barbados. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yes, I appreciate that, and I also want, before we get back to the Roseau and you giving us a sense of what it was like. Somebody said you were a very good goalkeeper, very flamboyant, meaning I guess you would do all of those fancy things.
That's why I have two bad knees and a hip. No, sometimes, you know, in Roseau up to today, fellas who remembered who played football, they would say, boy, Ed man, boy, and they give you a little boost up. It's very nice to do that, yeah.
So you only served as a goalkeeper?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did you choose goalkeeping?
Well, when I went to school in England, I was a goalkeeper as well at school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other sports?
Yes, I used to play field hockey.
Field hockey?
Yes, and I actually used to, because when I was in England, I lived in Bedford with a family that were good friends of my family here, because I didn't know of any Air or Whitchurch people in England at that time. And I played field hockey for Bedfordshire, the Bedfordshire County, which was a great experience. And they would have Easter festivals down in the south of England, and you'd have some teams coming from France and Belgium and so on to play in this Easter hockey. So it was really quite an experience. And I was very sorry when I came back to Dominica. That was one of the disappointments, was that there was no hockey.
Yeah.
And of course, I played cricket as well and athletics, and I swam for the school as well.
But you were a full sportsman,
Yes.
Mr. Ed, a full sportsman you were. All right, so we're going to take a break for a moment. We still have to talk about school in England and what happened there. And then we'll come back, we'll circle back to Roseau and what Roseau looked like before. We have quite a bit to talk to Mr. Ed about as we continue this anniversary special program with Gary Ed. This is the In the Spotlight radio show. I just want to say thank you to Fine Foods Inc. for providing me with the single barrel Angostura rum. I hope Mr. Ed has a little drink, sometime. We also want to thank Josephine Gabriel and Company for the bottle of wine. And then we also have some dinner for Mr. Ed. It's takeaway, Mr. Ed, from the Great Old House.
Thank you very
So we
much.
want to thank Mr. Mr. Leonard for that. And we also have a goodie box of some good stuff. And the person said to me, which is Mr. Ronald Astafan of Pamplemousse Goodies and Services, it'll come shortly. He said to me, I really try to take Mr. Ed, whenever he caters, he always likes a little local in his stuff. So he tried to make sure he put in something for you in there. So we just want to say thank you to the sponsors of those items this evening so that I could contribute a token there to my guest tonight. We're coming back. This is the In the Spotlight radio show. Stick around with us. So much more to come.
In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight, featuring people from all walks of Dominican life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of our people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, our public servants, youth, and the ordinary Dominican. Listen to their stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the Spotlight will also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday nights from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight.
And we are back. Mr. Ed, someone who is listening actually sent a photo.
Oh my God! Oh, sorry,
It's all right.
sorry.
Yes. A photo of the
Wait.
plane that you actually went on.
I think we have it in this year's calendar.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll talk about those calendars as well that you do every year. So this is the In the Spotlight radio show. Just stick around with us. We're coming right back.
Mm-hmm.
8:57 is the time in the studios. Really loving this. So, Mr. Ed, we went to England to study. Tell us more.
But before that, you asked about Roseau.
Yes. Well, whichever way we want to take it.
Well, let's take Roseau.
Let's take Roseau.
Roseau was a sleepy little town.
Sleepy.
Yes, and very clean.
Oh.
Very, very clean, despite the fact that there were a lot of little old wooden houses. But you could see that an effort was done to maintain it properly. And there was respect for people. And you would find a lot of the older people, anytime they would pass a female, a lady, they would doff their hat, you know. And
we did that in Roseau.
Yes, just lift the hat. You know. I remember one in particular, Mr. Lockett, Randy Lockett, was famous for that. He had his straw hat, and not straw hat, but his felt hat, and he would just doff it. But very, civilized it would be. Parking was not a problem because they hardly had anything.
This parking thing is really a pet peeve, right?
a lot of what you call it, a lot of bicycles around, and of course, Bath Estate was a large lime producing area there. So there was a sort of a country feel. There was no, let's say, goodwill. There were no houses up there. There were just fields of whatever it was at the time. And right at the top, there was a big house. The botanical gardens were first class, well maintained. You were not allowed to just go in there and misbehave. There were gates, there were warders that would walk around and keep an eye on things. Respectful again. Then you had the schools were there and so on. It was just a quiet, simple little place. And people just got on with their life, very poor. I remember the hospital was where the government headquarters is. And I think there was only one private room at the top before when you entered. Across the road where you have the forecourt was a very large area, which is a maternity ward at the time. But that was the hospital. And then, of course, the police headquarters was Fort Young. I'm talking about 40s and
yes, 40s,
of
50s, course.
Because it was a fort, but by the middle of the 1800s, the war, there were no more war in the Caribbean, so to speak, no French-English battles for the islands. Everything went back to Europe. So the Fort Young was used as the police headquarters. And you hear people, up until maybe 20 years ago, you hear older people say, Mokali 04, they're going to make a complaint because the charge office was at the front where you're going to Fort Young. And one of the things I remember as a child, anybody, let's say passing by the river, once they crossed the line of the cathedral, they would turn and just not genuflect kind of thing,
genuflect,
or maybe make the sign of the cross.
Yes.
which was always something that struck me. So those were the sort of basic things that I remember. And of course, when there was a funeral, people would walk, and then you had to carry the coffin. And you can imagine somebody dying in the middle of Roseau, and you have to go up Constitution Hill to go to the cathedral, and it's a big person, and there was lots of little things like that.
What about the business landscape? What was that like?
Well, you had a lot of small businesses. Really, there was no big supermarkets or large establishments. A lot of small ones around the place. That is, as I basically remember.
So that is the picture that you have of Roseau back then. And I'm just going to ask you to just make a comparison as to where we are today in terms of the city of Roseau.
That's not fair, because
Is it?
spoil the meeting, spoil our game together, because it's very disappointing.
Oh.
There's no organization now. People do what they want, park where they want. I don't know what is going to happen, if there's a plan for the city. But it's not it's clean in a way, but you have all these vehicles around the place. It's just sad, very sad. A lot of the older buildings are being pulled down. Obviously, the owners want to do that. It's their right. Some of the historic locations are being used for other things. So a lot of the charm, the things that people come to Dominica to see, there's concrete all over the world, but people come to see things. They want to know the stories of this old house, or this particular area, piece of land, whatever it is, this church, this cathedral, and I hope we don't destroy all of them, because we become like everywhere else.
The cost of development, people might say.
Well, yes, I suppose so. Yeah.
Modernization and all of that.
Yes, but you can somehow or the other maintain some of these places by proper, I don't know, building codes or whatever it is. But that's a subject by itself, which I.
But not necessarily going into too much detail, there seems to be a few things that pains you in terms of the city, and maybe by Dominica by extension, probably. But a few things you would like to see done would be, give me three things.
Well, first of all, a plan for parking. That's number one. Number two, a plan for vending, where vendors have a place which is not on a street corner, on a street, on thing, but somewhere that is decent, where there are facilities and they're treated like human beings, and which it isn't right now. It's just a mad scramble. The third thing I would think is the organization of events. What is happening where? Where can this one could be done without disrupting other people's lives who are not in that particular thing? Planning, in other words. The city needs to be planned without destroying the beautiful things and the interesting historical architectural things, and still have a modern city. But it's parking, vending, and this question where anybody can put up anything anywhere, and it's accepted.
You need to see some changes there. While we're on that topic, Mr. Ed, I want to just, there was an article in 2010, I think it was on News Online Dominica or something of the sort. And the headline of the article was, Dominica is not ready to welcome visitors to the island. Not clean, hospitable to welcome visitors. And you were being quoted in the article as saying that. That was about 12 or 13 years ago in 2010. Do you still feel that way? And do you think anything has been done since then to improve?
I would think that there are certain things that have been done in the sense of hotels, guest houses, standards have increased. But you still have the melee that was there and is still here with us today. And if we're going to, people come here and they enjoy what they see, but at the end of it all, you have to be able to keep abreast with cleanliness, organizing, and so on, because of a proper pavements and so on. I know there's a plan to have proper pavements and put all the utilities underground in certain streets. Fine, but do you then allow the vending to go on those new things? So I don't know, but I think this is a subject that really is needs to be looked at by all people concerned. Why people have to make a living, yes, but they need to make the living in comfortable surroundings. Yes, the cars are coming in, but you need to be able to have somewhere where they can go and get out from this complete mess that there is right now.
And I'm definitely with you on that one, Mr. Ed, right there. Where your company is located. Flow, where I work, is right next door. Every day we have the challenge of the vendors right in front of those locations. And like you rightly said, everyone needs to earn a living. And I know the person that you are, based on what your grandparents taught you. You want these people to make a living, but it's just that, it has to be done in a proper, structured manner to the benefit of both the vendors and the consumers, those who are coming to purchase from them. So while we're here, Mr. Ed, let's jump into business. We have a few things to cover.
What about England now?
What about England? Did we miss England?
But I wasn't in business then. Okay. So it's up to you.
So no. So we're gonna do that. I like that, Mr. Ed. Help me to get back on track. Before you got into business, you were in England studying, and we didn't find out what happened after that. Yeah. So let's go.
Okay. Well, I was in Barbados, and then my grandparents decided to go to school in England. So all the arrangements were made, and I went to England by boat. It was called Fives and Elders. It was a banana company, English company, and they had a vessel called the Golfito. Golfito, yes. And that vessel had to go to Barbados to pick up the vessel. And I went with a family who, in fact, were schoolmaster at same lodge with his family. They'd had a contract. Large contract had come to an end, and they decided to go back to England. So we were very friendly with them, my family. So I accompanied them. So they looked after me because I was, how old was I? 12 years old, 1955, 42, 55 is how much? 13 years? Yeah.
Anyway,
so I went to them. So they got on this boat. It was a part passengers and part cargo. From Barbados, we went to Trinidad, spent a few days there, loading cargo, loading bananas. And from Trinidad, we went to Jamaica, where we went to Kingston, and then everybody had to get off the ship. And we had some friends, the people I was with had some friends in Mandeville, in the center of Jamaica. So we had a few days there. First time I felt cold in my life because it was fairly high up in the mountains up there. And then we had to find ourselves at Port Antonio, which was a banana export port for all of Jamaican bananas. And I remember when the day came and we set sail, I actually cried because in my mind, I said, my God, I'm leaving the Caribbean. That's all I know, going across the Atlantic Ocean to go to school in England. But anyway, soon got over that, and we arrived in Southampton eventually. And I was amazed by two things. First of all, the tides. I don't know if you've ever been to England.
I've not.
Well, sometimes the tide is very high,
okay,
and sometimes it's very low. And when it's low, you see the surface of the seabed, and all the ships and so the smaller ones, will all be on the side. And then all of a sudden, tide would come in, and there was this wonderful bay again with ships, sort of thing. And I had never seen so many white people in one place. It sounds stupid, But and that was the two things that thing. Anyway, it was the summertime.
But you look like that, Mr. Ed.
I know, but I didn't think that way. Anyway, then that was the summer, and then of course went to school down in south of England, and little did I know what kind of weather was waiting for me. Because don't forget, 1955 was only 10 years after the end of the Second World War, 1945. So England was still in a state. Houses, most of them had open fires and no central heating and so on. So it was very rough.
That's right.
And the school I went to was supposed to toughen you up. Cold water in the mornings, get up out of bed and wash your face in cold water. Sometimes it was a little bit of ice as if on the water. Anyway, I survived all of that, and then we went to public school, which was for 5 years, which was wonderful because I got a pretty good education there. And then I worked for 1 year with Lloyd's, and one day I was sitting down in a restaurant or some place to have a meal, left work to have a meal, and I suddenly heard a Barbadian accent. So I said, wait a while, sounds like somebody I know. And I went around, and there was one of my best friends from Lodge School in Barbados who had been sent to England to study insurance in the same way that I was studying insurance at Lloyd's. And we met up. And we both of us said, what are we doing here? We have family businesses in thing. Let's get home.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, we just said it's time to go back. Anyway, I've missed a few years of in England, but that was the sort of thing that we came to. Why? What are we doing here? Let's go and work for ourselves. And that was 1960. For me, 1964.
1964.
And
what was your friend's name?
Tommy Pierce, but he's dead now.
Okay, yes, passed on.
Passed on. But that's 58 years ago. In November, whatever it was, 1964, I walked into Whitchurch.
So
58 years.
So Tommy,
yes,
encouraged you.
No, both of us.
You encouraged each other.
Yeah, we said, what are we doing here? Let's go back. We've done our share of whatever school or university, and we had our education, and let's go back.
So you started. You worked for 1 year. You said.
Yes, just about a
year
yes.
thereabout.
In fact, it was just about 10 years, 55 to 64, 9 years, whatever, in England. So that between school, a few years at university, and then 1 year working up in things.
So you pack away stay England?
No, time to come home.
Time to come home. And you decided, what was the trip back home like?
Well, in all the years I was in England, I think it's only 3 times I came.
Okay.
But by that time, there was British Airways Overseas Corporation, BOAC. And I remember it used to go, when we were coming up from Barbados on BOAC, Barbados, Bermuda, Gander, Newfoundland, across to Reykjavik, which was in Iceland, down to Prestwick in Scotland, and eventually down to London. That is how the route that
was a route.
Yeah.
I again, just like your friend who was on last week, Mr. Ed, I must commend you for your memory. You seem to remember quite a bit at that stage of your life. And I think that is impressive. And I really like that you can give us so many details. I mean, you're actually giving us the roots 58 years ago, So, that is quite impressive. And I'm sure those who are viewing and listening will definitely agree. So you decided you're coming back home to Dominica, you and your friend. So Tommy went to Barbados.
Yes.
And you came to Dominica.
Dominica, yes.
And you came to Dominica to what?
I came to the family business, which was established, and it was still going on. When I got here, it was what we were doing. It was a small upstairs of, because in 1961, the original buildings were destroyed by fire.
I read that
so
somewhere.
You had the block that we occupy today. But at that time in 1964, we had to move to the present Western Union building, which was owned by Elrose and Company. And we bought it a few days after the fire in 1961, and whatever was left from the other original building, we moved across. And interestingly, it was a building. It's a very old building, that one actually, where we are today, and it was used by Elrose and Company to pay farmers who bought limes to the Lacoudre, which was the Elrose and Company factory at
Bath Estate.
Bath Estate. It was called Lacoudre, was the French name for the area, and they would come to this particular place to get the money for the limes that they had supplied, you know. So then, when we came back, I came back in '64. Then we had the small shop, we had insurance, shipping. We had agency for Austin cars. We had Rally Bicycle, was very popular thing, and various other things which were there. And as time got on, we purchased where we still had the burnt out lot, parts of the original block.
And that is where exactly today?
Yes.
The part that got burnt was where exactly today?
It was most of that complete block.
Okay.
And Royal Bank was on the corner facing Prevost Mall and what you call it, on Kennedy Avenue. You have courts on one side. When that particular corner was where Royal Bank was.
Okay.
And then there was a place, fellow called, there was a Hit Parade, which was some music place with perfumes and so on. And then we continued to the rest of the building we owned, and that's where the fire was. And you come around up to the lane now, where we had the Paz Hotel, which was right on that corner. And there was one little section which was owned by about 4 or 5 people, and we had a great difficulty to get them to sell. Some didn't want to sell, some were dead, some it was a story. And I remember when we finally got through, I signed a check for $125,000. That must have been 1960, 64, maybe something around that. I was afraid. $125,000.
That's a lot of money.
The hand shook when I had to sign it, but that gave us the whole lot,
Right.
complete lot.
Okay.
And then in the supermarket, and then we built the offices and stuff upstairs. So that was a move from the small building across, and then we from then on we went through different things and so on.
Well, a day like today, Mr. Ed, that 125,000 would be a few millions.
Oh yes, I can manage.
Definitely a few millions. So when you came back and came into the business, in what area did you get involved?
I started with shipping and insurance. Mr. Deloney, Rodney Deloney, Cedar Deloney's father, was the sort of manager there, and I was working with him. And there was a lady called Cynthia Lestrade. She's been in the States for years and years and years. Her father was Scully Lestrade, who was the town clerk at the time. So those are 2 people, and that I remember, especially Mr. Deloney. He did a lot to get things going. So I worked with him. And then in 1971, I became the manager. And 71, yeah. And that's continued from there until the end of last year.
Which one of your family members was actually running the business when you came back?
There was my grandfather's second wife.
Your grandfather's second wife?
Yes.
Okay.
Bernice, she was an ATN from Scott's Head.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. In terms of
she was a sister. That's another story, but she lives in Australia now. She's in her 90s and so on. But one of her sisters is Ursula Harris.
Okay.
Yes, from Scott's Head. So she was in charge of the business at the time.
It would be interesting to know, in terms of your grandfather.
So he died in 68.
I was about to ask, when did he pass on?
Yeah, he died in 68, but she was married to him.
She was married to him.
She continued to operate as the manager.
Okay.
68, 61, 68 to 71, yeah.
71.
Yeah, and then she left, she went overseas.
She went overseas.
Yeah.
And you took up the mantle.
Right.
You took up the mantle.
Exactly.
And when you took up the mantle, Mr. Ed, what type of business? How was that business positioned at that time? What did you take on? Did you take on a thriving business?
Yes,
It was a
yes,
thriving
oh
business.
yes, oh yes, but a smaller business.
A smaller
But you
business.
have to think of what Dominica was in '64.
Well, I wouldn't know. I wasn't
No.
born yet.
Dominica, we were still a colony,
Yes.
because and we still there were people from England running the place until '67 when we became associated state. We got responsibility for internal affairs and so on. But there was no Deepwater Harbor, so the ships would anchor in Roseau, and everything had to come ashore on lighters. There was a sort of a telephone system that was mostly in Roseau, and it was situated in the lane, Paul Green, across that lane, Long Lane, yeah, one of those nice buildings. And if you had to get to ring Portsmouth, you'd have to go, you'd ring, and you had to and then exchange, and I want to speak to, I think it was Collie who had an exchange. So you'd get as far as Collie Ho, and then you'd have to Collie Ho exchange with them, who you want to speak to in Portsmouth, and they would to connect the thing. So it was really kind of thing. There was, of course, no television, no cell phones. It was a completely different world. And the half day was on a Thursday. It was a half day midweek on a Thursday. So you worked until 12 o'clock, and then that was it. And then you had to work whole day Saturday. So then I was able, I don't remember exactly when that was, but I stopped this half day on a Thursday and had the half day on a Saturday. And then sometime around that time, the government decided that we work a 5-day week. So Saturday became a day off.
Okay. All right. That's
So,
interesting.
but Thursday was the half day. So you'd work up to Thursday, and half day would be Thursday.
And Friday now.
Friday was a working day.
Friday
and
was
Saturday, half day Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. But I can't remember the dates, years when that changed.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a completely different sort of life then, and there was a cinema, Carib Cinema. That was one of the highlights. You'd go there and you'd sit down and watch these movies. And there was Bunty Roy, who was the manager. And if you were going to go upstairs, you had box, balcony, what was it underneath? House and pit. So
well,
if you had
pit would be for those who don't have much money to
right in the front. And if you had to go up to box and you didn't have a tie on, Mr. Roy had ties downstairs.
Are you kidding?
You'd actually have to put a tie on before you were allowed to go upstairs. That is where Prevo Cinema Hall is.
Yes,
right now.
yes. Carib Cinema.
And then you had the boxes, and then under the house was that little thing. And then it was a wonderful experience, because if there was one of these karate things, the whole congregation, not congregation, but the whole audience, every time they fired, they say, "Eagles, Eagles." And then if the movie wasn't particularly interested, somebody would,
no worries.
a big yawn, and they would flash their flashlight onto the clock as if to say, "Time to go home."
Time to go home.
It's boring.
Oh my goodness, people were terrible back then.
Anyway, that's just a little sideline.
I love that. I love that, Mr. Ed. It really gives us a good opportunity to sort of picture what life was like in Dominica back then, when probably many of us were not even born as yet. And tell us now, Mr. Ed, the journey that Wick Church went through under your leadership to today.
Okay, well,
you may choose to also incorporate the Maria experience and the COVID experience, for example.
Yes. Well, it was a time of change. The unions were very, what was the word I want? Active. Anthony Frederick Joseph. You had Dawu and Wawu, and various other people, and fighting for the workers, because it was a change in the society and a change in social values. I remember one of the things that if you were a woman and you got pregnant and you went to have your baby, your employer could just tell you, "I'm sorry, you can't come back," whether you were married or not, whether you single and having your child. There was no guarantee that you would be allowed to come back or
No
could come
rights
back.
there.
So that was one of the things. So there were a lot of those kinds of
Mhm.
things going, which affected our business. And then you had strikes and what have you. But it was a very quiet period, I seem to remember, and we just got on with our business. Um, the cruise ship business started before David, I think it was, where you'd have these German cruise companies, um, sorry, Russian ships chartered to German tour operators, and we probably have maybe 20 calls or something for the year. And it was interesting because, of course, communism and all that. And when these Russian ships were here, none of the crew or anybody were allowed to come ashore because, of course, for obvious reasons. And if the tender was coming ashore to bring the pilot back, or some official who had need to go on board, or the agent, there would be somebody sent on the tender to watch the seaman who was operating the thing, and they were always dressed in khaki and watching to see what was going on.
Mhm.
So to if the person was going to jump ship and,
Mhm,
and stay in
mhm.
Dominica. And that was the beginning of the cruise business. And I remember, I'm talking about shipping and tours now.
Yes,
It
that
was not
element of the
yes, it's
business.
not until 1987 when Carnival Cruise Line, the what was the boat say? My God, I forget that one. But it was a famous Italian captain, Captain Castanino. The schedule for that ship used to be Miami, I think Puerto Rico, St. Thomas and Martin, Antigua, Barbados. But he used to have a lot of trouble in Antigua because the authorities would never be there on time, and he warned them. And every time he passed Dominica, he sees this beautiful island. He said, "Wonder what kind of place this is," and so on. So when he warned the Antiguan people, if you didn't do what you're supposed to do, we're going to bypass you. And one, we got a call saying that this ship is going to come here, and he liked what he saw.
So what was it?
He
He
bypassed
bypassed
Antigua, and
Antigua.
it came in here on one occasion, and he said, I'm going to recommend to my the company that they drop Antigua and put Dominic in its place, which he
my.
did 1987. And they put us on a trial for a few months, and we did very, very well.
Awesome.
And that was the beginning of the cruise business. Because if the other lines would say, well, if Carnival can go to Dominica, there must be something there.
Right.
And that is the beginning of the really the beginning of the cruise ship business. And you can see what it is today.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And of course, clearly, you have played a major role within the tourism industry here in Dominica, with being an agent.
Right.
Tell us the role that your company played.
Well, we're the agent and tour operator, and as there are other tour operators, and it's a very important responsibility when you are the agent of a ship. It can be a cruise ship, it can be a cargo vessel, it can be the ferry, because you are the representative of that company in Dominica, and if anything goes wrong, you're the one that's supposed to come up and help and try to get things working. Um, so we're very proud at where we are today. And personally, I remember before the headquarters of all these major lines are now in Florida.
Mhm.
I used to go up to by myself to New York, where some of the offices were. This is before the worldwide
Mhm.
cruise industry is what is, and walk around to the offices and try and get them to include Dominica. And then, of course, they shift the companies realize the potential worldwide, and they moved down to Florida. And I used to go there with at first by myself, and then of course the tourist board was getting stronger and stronger, and
Yes,
of course we
yes.
had a delegation that used to go. So that's a very good business for us, but we need to have some better facilities now, because when you have a ship alongside in Rosa with 3,000 or 5,000 passengers and another 2,000 crew, it's too much, and the huge monster that is there. So we really need to do that, which I think the government is working on. So that's a cruise business, and of course a cargo ships.
Before we move on, again, just getting your point of view for someone who played such a major role in you know enhancing and growing and developing the cruise business in Dominica. What would you like to see done to take it to the next level?
Well, I think the government already has, at least that's what I've been hearing, to have a plan to have a proper cruise village and some additional berths. Where it's going to be, I'm not sure if it's down at Woodridge Bay, outside of the center of Roseau, right? But you're close enough to the center to be able to walk to it, where you have a sort of a restricted area for the taxi drivers, for the vendors, a proper area. And we need to do that, because we can't continue as we are right now. The Bayfront cannot take anymore, and the appearance is not what it should be, really isn't it? So that needs to be done. As I said, I'm not sure where it will be, but that needs to be done.
Do you have any recommendation of where it could be?
Well, I think
Have you given it some thought?
there talk of down by where the Canefield Airport is, down that area there. There's been talk of that, where you have plenty of land and you could have a proper things, or down by the present Woodridge Bay, the cargo port. But I think there are various
options
are already being
you would
looked
just
at.
like to see it happen.
Yeah, it needs to happen.
It needs to happen, and it's sooner than later.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. So other elements of the business.
Well, we were agents for Morris, for Austin, but we quickly gave that up because we realized that if we had to do it properly, we would have to build facilities, proper garage facilities.
To store the
Yes,
vehicles.
so we gave, and then we started to concentrate more on the retail business, that is the supermarket and so on. So the supermarket in Rosa was built in 1975. Then what again? Then we have various other agencies, things like Nestle and Diageo, which is whiskey, gin, so on, and various other things in that. Right then, of course, we started to handle the small aircraft that used to come in at Canefield, and that company called Ground Handlers Limited has expanded, and we're now at Douglas Charles, and we handle most of the airlines that come in there, including American.
Awesome.
And we have about 40 people, I think it is, employed just to do that, and they're all being trained by American, by Caribbean Airlines, and so on. So that is a very good business. Difficult to get trained people, but at least we have a thing. And as we keep telling the people that are there today that they're pioneers, because they are the people, when they look back on their life, they were the ones that dealt with the first direct flights from the United States. So that's that. Then we have insurance, of course, which is going through a transitionary period. Then there's Western Union, DHL. So all of these things came on. As things came on, we dropped things that were not making money, and that really there was no future to that.
But clearly, you were taking risks. You were taking.
Business is a risk, huh?
Yeah,
especially in Dominica.
Yes.
You don't know, because in the retail business, everybody's selling the same thing at the same price, the same surroundings. So you just have to be able to do something a little different. Give better service and so on, but the prices are more or less the same.
And so these supermarkets, we've seen as well go through changes, and you're actually now with IGA.
Yes.
Tell us about the relationship with IGA.
It's International Grocers Association of the States. It's the United States, where you don't actually get any money, but the fact that you have that logo, it means that you maintain or reach a certain standard and you maintain that standard. But down at Canefield, it's not an IGA supermarket. You can choose if you want it or not. And,
Okay.
And sometimes some of the goods that you sell in Roseau, IGA goods, you're not allowed to sell.
Oh.
But there's a whole lot of other things that you can
Yes.
do.
Yes. So IGA is a brand. You don't have to pay them.
It's just an organization.
It's just an organization.
Yes. The fact that you are a
so
member.
You have to sell there.
No.
Do they have a product line and so
no,
on?
No.
Okay.
It's just an organization that means that the fact you belong to them, you are of a certain standard and reputation. That.
You recently opened Big W. Congratulations
Thank
on
you very
that.
much.
It's another step in business, another risk, taking. So congratulations on that. But I want to talk about the supermarket and business in general, as you would have gone through. I don't know if you can go all the way back to, let's say, Hurricane David, but definitely more recent.
David was a terrible experience as well. But fortunately, we survived because there were a number of staff who lived in Roseau who actually came out the night and protect that Wednesday night after the worst of the storm had passed. A roof came across from the other side of the street. I don't know if it's where Brohim's place is. I'm not sure if it's that roof. And slammed, because at that time we had big glass showcase windows. And the staff came out and prevented people from going in to loot.
Bravo.
Wonderful, yeah. So we actually badly damaged and so on, but we were able to start up, and of course when people started coming from the country areas who were devastated, we were able to give them stuff and what have you.
Okay.
So that was a major problem with us, and of course, fortunately, the building stood up, but it was not as an expensive hurricane as Maria, because there were not so many buildings and infrastructure in 1979 as there was in Maria's time.
2017.
For example, where we lived at Eggleston, it took a year and a month before we got electricity.
Wow.
Because the whole country was in a state of collapse, because don't forget there were all that social problems in the late 70s before the hurricane came. So there was no proper government, and there were strikes and all the things that we're all familiar with.
But then Hurricane Maria came.
Oh, that's a different case.
In 2017.
Yeah. We were more organized because we have all these wonderful gadgets and so on. But at the end of it, what I will remember is the fact of the looting. When they finished with Whitchurch, including the supermarket, the wholesale at the back, and don't talk about Canefield, we didn't have anything to sell, Nothing to sell. Bills to pay. What are we going to do? And it was frightening, because we did not know from one day to the other what we were going to do. Place was, as you know, everybody was very much affected. And it was one or two companies that gave us a little credit, like Carib Bear and so on. Because the supermarket, as we see it today, when water came back in Roseau and there was some semblance of life getting back, we just opened the front door, opened the back door, and just hosed everything out and loaded the rubbish on the trucks. There was one big gaping building, because that's what we had to do. There was no fixing of the shelves because everything was mashed up. Then, of course, the wholesale. And I couldn't go down to Roseau for several days, but my children, when they came down, they just watched people in the wholesale just looting. You had the police there, and they couldn't do anything. They just couldn't do anything. And that is something that will stick with me. The fact that we were able to shake ourselves and say we have people to we're responsible for 100 and whatever it is people who rely on us. We can't just turn our back and whatever we have go to Timbuktu or
Couldn't be
Miami.
defeatist. You
No,
couldn't be
so he
defeatist.
came back thing, and then it's rough. It was rough, very rough.
How long did it take you to get things back up and running? And how were you
Well,
able to
we
do
were
it?
going along fine, and then until of course COVID came along, and that put a spoke in the wheel, so to speak, and we sort of had to slow down. And
But somebody might say, Mr. Ed, people need to eat though, even if there's COVID.
yes, eat, but what about all the other things that we had? Eating is one thing. You have to pay to bring this stuff in, where certain things like the services that you do, people pay for the services, but you don't have to put money out. So that, but then by the middle of last year it was when COVID was more or less over. We're getting back. So it'll be another couple of years or so, because we're still feeling the effects of it.
Well, the tourism related element of your business definitely would have been affected significantly.
Yes, well, the airlines were not coming in.
Yeah.
Insurance, yes, because the people had the insurance claims, but the services, the side on Dominica, which is bringing people in, that was not functioning. What again? I think most of the things were not working, so it was just the food part of it that kind of kept things ticking over.
As a businessman who had been the head of this business, and Hurricane Maria comes and does that, then COVID comes along. Do you just put your hands on your head and say,
because
we Papa
because you had Erica, although Erica didn't affect us to this
too
extent.
much.
And 2 years later, you had Maria. But before Erica, you had other storms and so on. So one wonders now, it is 2023. What is going to come now? Is something else going to come and mess it up? Because if you look at Dominica's history, it's up and down,
Yeah.
Up and down, up and down.
Every other year almost.
Yeah.
And the hurricane season begins soon, on the 1st of June.
Well, the 15th of today, they put out all their different things that they're going to be doing. That is the meteorological companies and so on. I was reading today that they're hoping that El Nino, which is the phenomena that is good because it prevents the westerly winds from blowing across. Anyway, we just have to see what happens.
We just have to see.
But we live in a little island that has full of drama.
We're taking a break. We're coming right back. This is the In the Spotlight radio show featuring Gary Ed. It's already 9:45. It's getting to 9:45, and we're talking some more when we come back.
In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight, featuring people from all walks of Dominican life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of our people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, our public servants, youth, and the ordinary Dominican. Listen to their stories. No limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the Spotlight will also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight.
In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. In the Spotlight, featuring people from all walks of Dominican life, spotlighting their triumphs and tragedies, dreams, hopes, and aspirations, untold stories, touching the human and personal side of our people in politics, religion, sports, business, music, culture, the media, and more. Getting to know our farmers, public servants, youth, the ordinary Dominican. Listen to their stories. no limitations, no restrictions, no holds barred. In the spotlight, we'll also spotlight interesting topics, issues, and relevant situations. Don't miss In the Spotlight on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. And we're back. We're back, Mr. Ed.
Yes, ma'am.
I suspect I have you up a little late tonight.
Yes, long after my bedtime.
Yes, don't worry. We're almost towards 10 o'clock. Post Hurricane Maria, we're going to talk about you and your contribution to community. As you said, growing up, your grandparents taught you honesty. They taught you to care for others and so on. Probably just in a bit of probably a few of the things that you've made a contribution to where community and people are concerned.
Well,
your company does a lot, I know.
Yeah, well,
yes, and
yeah.
of course that would be through your guidance and through your spearheading as well.
But sometimes,
what are those that stand out to you?
Well, individual helping. Like the other day, just last week, I was walking somewhere around my supermarket there, and some guy came up to me and said, "Hi, hello. You remember me?" I said, "No, I'm not sure. Help me." He said, "You paid for my schooling in the States or something." I said, "Really?" That's the kind of thing.
Oh my!
So I forget. I forget those things. I don't
yes.
always remember. So things like that. Of course, all the feast days and things like that. It's difficult to remember. Just giving, I suppose.
It's part of you. It's part of your heart.
Yeah,
that's what
and
you
my
do.
family too. My children are very much like that.
Yes.
Yes.
And can we just give them a little props? They're the children.
Yes. Well, as I said, I retired at the end of 2022.
So you officially retired?
Yes, but I have been coming in more than I can because I still have to hand over a lot of things, and of course I was not well for 8 weeks with this thing, this leg, so that put me back a bit. But Jason is the managing director. Damien is in charge of the airports and Western Union, DHL, and so on. Reddy is into tourism and so on, and they're all there doing things. So the functions have been divided amongst them. And of course, we have a very good staff. We have a lot of people who have been there for many years who are very reliable. And I don't call any names because if I call
no,
one,
you're going to get in trouble.
So to answer your question,
you've made your contribution.
Just help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Someone just sent me a message and they said, Mr. Ed brought Air Guadeloupe to Dominica. I don't know if he spoke about it already. I worked at Melville Hall. That was my first job.
Already? Okay. Remember, Air Guadeloupe, Air Martinique used to come in at, they had these little jet things, and they came in at Canefield when Canefield already had flights coming in. Yeah.
Mr. Ed, post-Hurricane Maria, the government of Dominica established a National Reconstruction Task Force, and that was led by former President Elliott Williams. You were part of that task force. Yes. What was the job? What did you guys have to do?
Looking at agriculture, tourism, and so on, and tossing ideas around. Spent a lot of time, and there was a report submitted, but maybe some of the things that we put in the report have in fact been used or included in government policy over the last several years. But we did a lot of work on that, really. And I've been on those committees for long, DIC, DEF. I was president of DEF during the problems with social issues going up to Hurricane David, and the Tourist Board, then the NDC, and Discover Dominica, Invest Dominica. What again? I think I served for time on the NBD board, but I didn't stay there for too long. Miss Charles put me on that, and I didn't I didn't stay there. She had a way of saying, um, I'll never forget. I was sitting in the old office one day, and she came upstairs, and this whoever the secretary, Miss Charles, there to see you. She came in. She says, boom, I have you down for Sweden. I said, Miss Charles, for Sweden. Yes, I want to put your name up to being
The consul.
the consul for Sweden. I said, well, fine, if it's going to help. So there was that.
So
And
for you is how you could help.
Yeah.
How you could make a
Yes.
contribution.
Yes.
And
And
if you could make a contribution, then okay.
Right. So that was that. And there were other things like that. Yeah, with NBD. I didn't stay there too long because I realized I was competing with many of the businesses who were bank customers who were asking for facilities and so on. And I just could not the honesty to think, well, I'm going to give somebody this, that they're going to use it against me. So I thought, no, I can't really be in that. That's not being honest.
And you left. You
Yeah,
asked
it
to-
wasn't for very long. But
Yeah.
I just realized I couldn't with all honesty, say I would give an honest answer.
What about recognitions, Mr. Ed? What level of recognitions have you received
Well, I
for
was
your contribution? Because you've
Cicero
certainly
Award
made
of Honor.
Cicero Award
Yes,
of
in
Honor.
1995.
That's a huge one.
I think it was the last parade in the gardens. It was Liverpool, I think, was the president, and I think it was myself, Lestrade, and was it Dr. There's three of us anyway, I don't remember, and that was in the Botanical Gardens. But,
And I'm sure along the way, many others have awarded
yeah, well, I was
you.
a Rotarian for a number of years, and when David came along, I just once again you were not allowed to miss meetings, and I just realized that what I had on my plate, it just didn't make sense, so I had to leave that. But I was given the Paul Harris fellow, so I had one of those things, and other bits and pieces over the years which I treasure. I have one of the things I want to do. I have bits of paper, documents, pictures, tote bag in boxes that
Wow.
in at my home, and I started during COVID when my family told me, the children told me, don't you dare leave your home. COVID is down here, 80, whatever, 70 something.
Don't want you to
So
get sick.
I started to
Yeah.
go through, and I would like to finish that. All bits of scrapbook, like, and put things in order. That's sort of a hobby.
And one of the things that you have become very, very well known for, it's those calendars.
Oh yes, that's my personal hobby I have of collecting material on Dominica, historical material, books, paintings, postcards, and so on. And I've been doing the calendar since 1978 or
Wow.
79. But in 78, when I have
That's over 40 years.
I have copies of all of them, and it started off like a one-page thing, and eventually ended up. But I'm running out of colored postcards, and I still have some stuff there, but I will continue to do that.
I think people appreciate that. I am sure there are persons who collect them.
Yes, they do.
I mean, that is so important. I mean, you see pictures of from 19 there, and it's
most of them are 1910 photographs.
1910
postcards, yes. And we always keep back a fair number so that when Dominicans come for Carnival or occasions like that,
they come looking for them.
Come looking for it, yes.
Yes, good job with that, Mr. Mr.
And they're very useful because they have the
Yes.
phases of the moon, they have the public holidays. Although I told Ms. Barron the other day that the phases of the moon are too small. You can hardly read it,
You need them to be bigger.
Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Ed, it's 9:56.
Wow.
You are 80 years old. What is still there to be done? what is still there to be accomplished?
Well, I try to be a quiet, not advocate. I don't like trouble. I don't like deba. I don't like
You
quarrel.
don't like melee.
No melee. If something is, I think is wrong, I will call the person and say, well, this I don't think it's right. Some of them nowadays you don't answer the telephone. You just say go bug. I don't have any
Mhm.
particular position, but I just don't want this little island of ours to just disintegrate and we lose our heart. There are lots of good people around who try their best, and I really appreciate when things go well. But so to answer your question, I will try to do, and what is the word I want? Influence. Whatever little influence. If I think something is wrong, and make my comments, and hopefully it might make sense. Not everything I want is right. That, and I would like to see the country cleaned up. We cannot, as I keep telling people, you cannot be pushing nature island of the Caribbean when you have, well, I just go down that road, but you know what I'm trying to say. It hurts my heart to see rivers polluted and so on by people who are going to enjoy themselves there, and they don't think of people who might come afterwards for a river bath, what they have to step over and pick up and all that. Stop it. Stop
So
it.
you're passionate about the environment and
Yes,
keeping
yes.
Dominica green
Yeah.
and clean. Yes.
Because I sometimes think 50 years from now, what are the rivers going to be like? Are they going to have water in them? Or are we going to be left with just a few, one or two? I don't know. But it's what we do now, how we behave, and I notice the government has have a lot of things they're going into now, green this and green that, and so that is excellent. But then they need to get it to everybody, not just to them to talk about it. So that's my worry. But as I said, I will continue to be concerned and do what I can.
How would you summarize this 80-year-old life? Highlights, lowlights as we wrap
Well,
up.
I was in it. I was born in colonialism. I went through all the ups and downs, the social upheaval that most countries would take a century to go. We did it in a few years, and up to independence, and being part of it, being a voice, and was able to blend, do whatever in my own way, because I was in the different positions that I held over the years, and because I had a business that is concerned. I will never forget. That's a stupid thing, but on the morning of Maria, we were downstairs in the supermarket. We opened, despite the government said to close, but a lot of people had no food, in the sense that the week before they did big shopping because that other storm was coming. So we said we can't do, we don't know how long this thing is going to be. So we stayed open, and we had two litter bins outside, the green things. And I said yes, I said to my good friend there, Latouche, who cleans around every day.
Yes.
Latouche, go and just put them inside. You never know. When we come back on Thursday or so, when you come back on Thursday.
Well, Mr.
So that
Ed,
was
let
it.
me tell you, you would not come back on Thursday.
No way.
Litter beans were gone with the wind.
No, but they
and
were
everything.
inside.
They were inside.
Yeah, that's why I put them inside.
Okay, you got to put them inside.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It is 10 o'clock, the time in the studios here of Q95 FM radio. And I don't think that I could have asked for a better guest tonight to observe the 10th anniversary of the In the Spotlight radio show. I learned quite a bit. And yes, give us some. I'm seeing the hats, Santo. Give us some hats. I really think Mr. Ed deserve all of those hats that
What's that?
they're giving some hats on the
okay.
Facebook. live. So I could not have asked for a better guest, and this conversation that we had tonight, I really truly appreciate, Mr. Ed. I know you were very reluctant, you were very resistant to do the program, and he said to me, "I'll come. You ask me the questions, and we do the program." And it was so effortless, though, Mr.
Well, I
Mr.
find it
Ed.
2 hours went very
Yes.
quickly, and thank you for your lead and your joviality, and you make people want to speak.
That's it.
But one thing I did not mention when
Tell
we're
me.
talking about tourism,
Mhm.
you probably knew your father was
Yes.
secretary of the Dominican Taxi
Taxi
Association,
Association.
and we have supported them, and they have supported us for all these years.
Yes.
And it was always a pleasure to work with him.
Thank
And
you.
he was there all the time.
You'd be
Yeah,
happy to
yeah,
hear
yeah,
that.
Yeah, I just saw
And I know that you always engage the cultural group as well.
Oh yes, that's
Yes, you always engage the cultural
Yes,
group to
yes.
perform. So thank you for that support as well that you provided,
My
Mr. Ed.
pleasure, my
You did put some food in my mouth as well. If we want to put it that way. Gary Ed, businessman, and so many other things. I really, really am happy for how our program went this evening. And I appreciate you, sir. You said don't stay away from this, sir. But I truly appreciate you, and I want to thank you. And I'm just going to give you an opportunity to give some final comments, and we wrap up.
Well, just to say, I'm happy I was born here. I'm happy that I have lived in this place. We criticize it all the time, but when you look around the rest of the world, we are very, very lucky to be where we are. And thank you for getting me to come. And thank those people who are sending me
those hearts.
Hearts, yes. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on our special anniversary program, 10 years on the air of the In the Spotlight radio show, coming full circle tonight with the final of the three who inspired the program on that day in 2013 when the DAIC kindly asked that I host their annual general meeting. And here we are today. I pray that we can continue to have many more years of the In the Spotlight radio show. As long as I'm able to, I will continue. I want to encourage you to follow our In the Spotlight radio show page, become a fan of our fans page, IT In the Spotlight radio show fans. And also, to participate, although we did the observance program tonight, we're using the month of May as a celebratory month. So we will continue with our giveaways and all that good stuff that we're doing via the page. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support over the last 10 years. It has been a pleasure doing this, whether I'm tired, whether I'm not, and I try my best to come here. And when I'm not able, I pray that you also understand as well. Thank you to Angostura Fine Foods Inc. for providing us with our 5-year-old Angostura single barrel rum. We thank Josephine Gabriel and Company Limited. We thank the Great Old House, and we thank Pamplemousse Goodies and Services for our contributions tonight. We will be back next week, Monday, God willing. As I said, continue to follow our social media platforms and continue to participate in our activities. Until next week, Monday, thank you so much again. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Ed. It was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. And I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did and as much as the listeners and fans did. Good night, everyone. See you next time.
for listening to In the Spotlight. We would love to hear from you. If you have suggestions of guests or topics and issues you would like featured on In the Spotlight, let us know. We would also welcome your feedback. Please send us an email at inthespotlight.da@gmail.com or contact us at 275-7565. In the Spotlight is aired on Q95 FM radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. with your host, Ferdina Frampton. Until next time, good night and God bless.
She said to her son the day his life was taken. She didn't know he wouldn't come back. He died from the bullet of a gun. And now a little boy's gone. She said, help me, Lord, help me. And she looked up to the sky and she heard a voice reply. When you cry, I cry. I smile along with you when you cry. I cry. I cry along with you when you smile. I smile. I smile along with you. Left homeless, abandoned when he was 2. So the streets like his and the shopping mall was the family he knew. It's not easy being homeless. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And he didn't have a mom or dad to help him get through. He said, help me, Father, help me. And he looked up to the sky, and he heard a voice reply. When you cry, I cry. I cry along with you when you smile. I smile. I smile along with you when you cry. I cry. I cry along with you when you smile. I smile. I smile along with you.
Early Sunday morning, me get up, I watch the news. Then me hear say last night I see you, them kill a you. Then mama tell me say our church sister Jacqueline just lose her brother over Seaview Garden. When she tell me chat, I know it mash me up, now tell the lie. But you know some man not huggy, so you know but see me cry. Every day and every night she still ask the father why our brother had to die. She hear her voice reply.
When you cry, I cry. I cry along with you when you smile. I smile. I smile along with you when you cry. I cry. I cry along with you when you smile. I smile. I smile along with you when you cry. I cry. I cry along with you when you smile. I smile. I smile along with you when you cry. I cry.
Equal rights and justice for all. Rise and never fall. Tell them, say, boom. What they gonna do when enough of them not true? Say what they gonna do, them get slew, yeah. Who do you think you are? We're living in a small world. As wicked as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As bad as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As tough as you think you are, we're living in a that one your name. Alright, that day will come when I stand and see all those wicked men in the fire getting burned. That day will come when they will try to escape and there will be nowhere to run. That day will come when I shall see their handing over bombs and bayonets and bullets and guns. That day will come when Emperor Selassie shall rise the world they get to loot them from out of Islam, yeah. And the day I would love to see their face for all those people they do to the human race and try to take things out of place, run away to space, shoot them in the air. After one that judgment you have to get the taste when them find out that them can't escape. Sadness face and none the people them chase. Smile on my face, that day will come when I just stand and see all those wicked men and the fire getting burned. That day will come when they will try to escape and there will be nowhere to run. That day will come when I shall see they handing over bombs and bayonets and bullets and guns. That day will come when Emperor Selassie shall rise the one they get to do them out of this slum. Who do you think you are? We're living in a small world. As wicked as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As slick as you think you are, we're living in a small world. As tough as you think you are, we're living in a that one and name now tell them escape today, you can't escape tomorrow. Make sure you stay back anytime you borrow. Make sure you don't live no life in a sorrow. Make sure you're not lean and straight like arrow. Make sure your brain not push out in a barrow. Make sure you make them walk out and borrow. Yeah, make sure your meditation and narrow. Judgment, I want to tell them something the other one. That day will come when I stand and see all those wicked men in the fire getting burned. That day will come when they will try to escape and there will be nowhere to run. That day will come when I shall see they handing over guns and bayonets and bullets and guns. That day will come when the Emperor shall light up on the wings of the heavens and the sun. Oh, yes, I will remain the same. Hailing Rastafari name and watch them going up in flame. For all the innocent going down the drain, you have to pay for the shackles and chains, and pay for this washing of the brain, and pay for these guns and cocaine, the sick and the lame. Alright, that day will come when I shall stand and see all those wicked men in the fire getting burned. That day will come when they will try to escape and there will be nowhere to run. That day will come.
Na na ne, na 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 ne, na na na. Dice again. Today bears witness that the history never learned is a history doomed to be repeated. That man's heart would be hardened if none to himself, and the cycle of destruction would be completed, and the cities and towns would be filled with corruption. Leaders would rule by hate and division, and when religion walks hand in hand with the system, time casts its shadow on much harder days to come. These are the days of darkness, low men in high office. Respect is lost even in schools. Oh, oh. These are the days when honesty, honor and integrity seems to be the treasures of a fool. Oh, oh. These are the days of deception. These are the days of destruction. If everything says these are the days, then these are the days. Whoa, whoa, these are the days. Whoa, 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 whoa. Na 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 na. World of hunger, diseases with no cure, unrest and uprisings everywhere. Reality means nothing, image is everything. The world is in the hand of the deceiver. Man is a victim of his own intelligence, and the youth are the same children of disobedience. And just like Babylon back then, seems an unseen force wields the system on a destructive course that no one dares to stop. These are the days of numbers, great signs and wonders. Seems we are back in the biblical days. Whoa, whoa. These are the days of Babylon. These are the days of false religion. These are the days of revelation. Whoa, whoa. These are the days when men has lost his way. These are the days when evil seems to pay. Everything says these are the days. And these are the days. Whoa, whoa. These are the days. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Na 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 na. The earth is changing, it's telling everywhere. There's even less oxygen in the air. The forces of nature, like never before, showing death and destruction everywhere. And we never stop long enough to consider, are we in sync with creation or creator? But it's all been said before, it's all been done before. We're no wiser than before, and it's also clear. Nobody really cares. These are the days of godless men, children ruling over them. Nothing can change man and his ways. Whoa, whoa. These are the days of floods of rain, earthquakes and hurricanes. Nothing has changed, but it's not strange. Whoa, whoa. These are the days of terror, the fall of the great world order. Everything says these are the days, and these are the days. Whoa, whoa. These are the days. Oh, 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 na 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 na. Boy, these are the days. Tried to make them understand. I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried, but they just didn't understand. I tried and I tried, and the Lord know I tried to make them understand. I tried, I tried, but they just can't understand. The more victimization is upon their back, the more foolish they becomes. The more victimization is upon their back, they satisfy Lord for less. I tried, but they just can't understand. I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried, but they just can't understand. Oh, God, people, when will they ever learn? This one turn them fool, that one turn them fool. So what are they waiting for? Fix up yourself and prepare to meet Jah, that you satisfy Lord for more. I tried, but they just can't understand. I try and I try and I try and I try, but they just can't understand. Father die in pain, mother die in pain, slavery continue. They say we have no right nowhere, in no corner of the world. And I try to make them notice, but they just can't understand. I tried and I tried and I tried to make them know, but they just can't understand. 24 hours make one day, they told us. 7 days make a week. And out of all of that, the whole 365 they can only name in 7 days. I tried and I tried, but they just can't understand. I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried, but they just can't understand. We beat them at night, we beat them by day. They take no heed. Church bell a ring and the children a sing, and it's to satisfy Lord for less. I try and I try, but they just can't understand. I try and I try and I try and I try, but they still can't understand. Son is waiting, not cut themselves for his sentence, you know. Father in the field can't find a thing, and mother no money. I tried, but they just can't understand. I try and I try and I try and I try, but they just can't understand. My daddy was short, my mommy was poor. Yeah, that's the money. Raging out of control, put on fire, earth on fire, fire burning, Lord, been and praying for things to get better, but Rasta know it gonna get worse, so much worse, signs of third times are getting clearer. And this month is getting nearer, clearer every day. Things are go crucial, coming up Babylon. Things are go brutal now. Dog, things are go brutal, coming up Babylon. Things are go crucial now. Lord, Russia, yeah. Russia, yeah. I'm wailing and much tribulation. Threats and more fears and rumors on war. World food shortage and much starvation. Man and man hurting to destruction. Send me never warning. Things are go brutal. Turning a Babylon, yeah. Things are go crucial now. So much crime and violence. Things are go brutal. Turning a Babylon, yeah. Things are go brutal now. Lord, Russia, yeah. Oh, Russia, yeah. Russia, yeah. Russia, yeah. Things that get tougher. Been on a praying for things to get better, but Rasta know it's gonna get worse. And so much worse. Signs of third times are getting nearer. And this month just is getting nearer, clearer every day. Things are go crucial, coming up Babylon. Things are go crucial now. Dog, things are go crucial, coming up Babylon. Things are go crucial now. Lord, Russia, yeah. Lord, Russia, yeah. Things are go crucial. So much crime and violence. Things are go crucial. So much of disease and a pestilence. Things are go crucial. Gonna get worse before it gets better. Things are go brutal now.
blessing over me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.